This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Welcome everybody, Bruchim Habayim. Thank you everybody for joining us. Somehow most of this trip happened in the last half hour before the trip started. So that means it's going to be a good one. We know this mamish, everything is bahashgacha, but when it comes to place in the last moments, that's hashgacha miyuchedas. So we're now headed to the holy city of Chevron. It's very interesting. It's considered that there are 4 ayaros kadoshos in Eretz Yisrael. Of course, all the cities in Eretz Yisrael are holy, but there are 4 cities that are specifically holy. Of course, Yerushalayim, Chevron, Tiberia, and Tzfas. Yerushalayim, of course, we know it's the Makam HaMikdash, Har HaMoriah, the Shar Shamayim. Chevron, the Maras HaMachpelah. Tzfas is the city of all the Mekubalim. And Tiberia, the Gemara in Rosh Hashanah says, will be the first stop of Mashiach Tzidkenu. Mashiach will reveal itself in Tiberia. We also know, Amen. We also know there are 4 Yesodos. There's Eish, there's Afar, there's Mayim, there's Ruach. The 4 Yesodos correspond to the 4 holy cities of Eretz Yisrael. Yerushalayim is Eish. The Eish Shel Mala rests on the Mizbeach. Chevron is Afar. It's the choicest burial spot. Chevron is Afar. Tiberia, you have the Kinneret, is Mayim. And Tzfas is Ruach. The Chesed L'Avram writes, but maybe on a different occasion when we go to Chevron, the Chesed L'Avram, the great-great-grandfather of the Chida, is buried in Chevron together with the Reishis Chachma, the Meleches Shloimeh, and the Stei Chemed, and other great Gedolim. Avner is buried in Tiberia, Osniel ben Kenaz. Where our first stop is going to be Rus and Boaz, which means we know Boaz was the progenitor of the Malchus Beis David, and Rus is Ima Shel Malchus. There's a very amazing sefer that I want to use as a basis for what we're going to speak about now. The name of the sefer is Tzion Ve'areha. This sefer was written by Rav Moshe Wolfson, and it's predicated on the idea that each place in Eretz Yisrael has a unique character and a unique connection to a specific chelek of Torah. And in the Sefer he darshans and he explains why certain notables were buried in certain locations. One, that's something we usually take for granted. Rus is buried here, Yishai is buried here, the Rambam's buried here. Why? Who knows? But if you think about it, sometimes there's always a very deep connection. Dvarim gedolim einam b'mikra. So let's try to understand, why is Rus, Ima Shel Malchus, and Boaz, progenitor of Malchus Beis David, buried in Chevron? What is it about Chevron? There's an incredible sefer. The name of the sefer is Nifla'os Mitoras Hashem. He says the following principle of prophecy: that when the Rebbeinu Shalom comes to a Navi and he tells the Navi something's going to happen, it will always happen in the place where the Rebbeinu Shalom spoke to the Navi. No, it's Ayam V'Noira. None of the other Mefarshim mention this idea. I think Hashem tells Abraham something. Okay, it will happen, but where will it happen? Who knows? No, it will happen in the spot that God spoke to Abraham. It's a klal nevuah. And therefore, the Nifla'os Mitoras Hashem says, Hashem told Abraham, you remember this? Kings will come from you. Who does that refer to? David, Shloimeh. It says in the Nifla'os Mitoras Hashem, if you look in the Chumash, Avram Avinu was living in Chevron. And that nevuah was said in Chevron, which means that the fruition of that nevuah will have to take place in Chevron. David will have to be anointed in Chevron. Shloimeh will have to be anointed in Chevron. And if you look in the Sifrei Nevi'im, when David HaMelech was declared king by Shmuel, so David said, okay, where should I go? Hashem said, Chevron. And then David said, okay, now that the Bnei Yehuda made me king, the rest of Klal Yisrael wants to make me king. Where should I go? Hashem said, Chevron. Why? He says, so that the stones that heard the Rebbeinu Shalom say, U'melachim imcha yetzeyu, will give edus that it happened. So this is a klal in nevuah. Wherever the nevuah takes place, that is where it ultimately comes to fruition. So that means Chevron is the city of Malchus. Now we understand, we could suggest why Rus and Boaz are buried in Chevron. It's the city of the Malchus Beis David. One more detail, very interesting idea. The Zohar HaKadosh says, how is one Zoiche to Malchus? One is Zoiche to Malchus through being shoyled over the Yetzer Hara. If you're a melech over the Yetzer Hara, one merits Malchus. Here are two examples. The brothers turn to Yosef. Yosef says, Ani Yosef, ha'od avichai. And the brothers looking at it, you're Yosef, the king of Egypt? So the pasuk says, Yosef said, Geshuna Elai, come close. He showed him, he was gemalt. Showed him he had milah. Says the Zohar, what Yosef was saying is, I was shoyled, I conquered my Yetzer Hara, I have a milah, I'm zoiche to Malchus. Another example. Boaz, Rus came to Boaz, Vayehi bachatzi halayla, and Boaz refrained ad haboiker. And Chazal say Vayila faced was a very big temptation. Says the Zohar HaKadosh, he overcame his Yetzer, and then he was zoiche to the Malchus Beis David. So through the zechus of Milah, one is zoiche to Malchus. Where then do you think the Rebbeinu Shalom would come to Abraham and tell him to circumcise, to have the Milah? Avada, it has to be the city of Chevron, the city of Melucha, because al yedei the Milah, one is zoiche to Malchus. So we see two very important phenomena of Chevron. Chevron is the city of Bris Milah. Chevron is the city of Malchus. Hashem told Abraham Avinu, Umalachim imecha yitzeu. More than 900 years later, David HaMelech was proclaimed Melech Yisrael, first by the Bnei Yehuda, and then by Bnei Yisrael. So we're going now to Kever Yishai, Avi David. When we get to the Kever, you'll see there's a sign with Yishai's name on it. We're going to discuss it there. And of course, Ima Shel Malchus, Rus, was the progenitor of David HaMelech. So, maybe when Mashiach comes and he's Megala first in Tiberia, maybe we're going to have to be Mamlechim, maybe he'll come to Chevron. I don't know. We'll find out soon. Be'ezus Hashem. Cool. Okay, I want to thank my good friend, Reb Sal Orbach, who is in charge of all logistics. If anybody wants to, has any questions, or wants to take care of any inyanim, you could speak to Sal Orbach.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.